My father threatened to report me for kidnapping the two children I had practically raised. When I demanded to know why, he folded his arms and said, "Because you are their sister, Harper. Stop pretending you are their mother." That happened 11 months ago. Yesterday, he sat in a family therapist's office and broke down when she asked him one simple question. What was June's best friend's name? My younger brother, Eli, had loved me before he could properly speak. His first clear word was Harper, not mom or dad. From the time he was born, my life quietly rearranged itself around him. While girls in my class saved money for festivals and new phones, I used my weekend wages to buy glucose strips, lunch snacks, and the dinosaur-shaped bandages he liked. Then June came along, and caring for one child became caring for two. I never resented them, not once. The best part of my mornings was lining up their breakfasts on the kitchen counter and watching their sleepy faces brighten. Eli liked cinnamon oatmeal with sliced bananas. June refused to eat toast unless it was cut into triangles. I knew which school days made them nervous, which teachers they trusted, and which lies they told when they were afraid of disappointing someone. Our parents claimed they were simply busy building a better future. Dad had become obsessed with an online financial freedom company based in Phoenix. Our garage was packed floor to ceiling with boxes of vitamin drinks he swore would make us rich. Mom worked for a luxury event agency, and her supervisor, Damien, always seemed to need her on overnight conferences in expensive hotels. Their absence became so normal that eventually no one questioned it. When Eli had a medical appointment, I took him. When June performed in her first dance showcase, I sat in the front row holding flowers. When school forms needed signatures, I copied Mom's from an old permission slip because waiting for her meant missing deadlines. At 16, I opened a savings account and deposited nearly every dollar I earned at a grocery store. I knew Dad would eventually spend the food budget on another shipment of miracle powder. He always did. For years, our strange little system worked. I woke at 5:20 every morning, packed lunches, checked homework, counted Eli's supplies, and braided June's hair while our parents slept behind a locked bedroom door. The kids were fed. They made it to school. They knew someone would show up for them. To me, that was enough. Then came Eli's graduation at Northridge High. For once, all 5 of us attended together. Dad wore a navy suit instead of one of his company hoodies. Mom kept her phone inside her purse for nearly 15 minutes. They claimed the best seats in the auditorium and posted smiling photos online about how proud they were of their brilliant son. When Eli crossed the stage, I cried so hard my vision blurred. I believed that was the emotional peak of the night. I was completely wrong.
The ceremony should have ended after the final diploma. Instead, Eli returned to the microphone. "This speech is not really about graduating," he began. "It is about the person who made sure I survived long enough to get here." He looked directly at me. The room went still. When I was 8, I collapsed outside a pharmacy because my blood sugar dropped too low. Harper was 15. She caught me before I hit the pavement and argued with an ambulance crew that kept asking where our parents were. People turned toward Mom and Dad. Most kids learn to manage diabetes from a specialist. I learned at our kitchen table because my sister checked out medical books and taught herself what our parents should have known. Dad's phone hit the floor. Mom stared ahead, her jaw tight. Eli lifted his diploma. "So Mom and Dad, thank you for giving me the best example I could have." For 1 second, they smiled. Then Eli pointed at me. "This belongs to Harper as much as it belongs to me. Maybe more. She gave up her childhood so June and I could have one." A murmur rolled through the auditorium. Relatives who believed I was helpful stared at my parents. Aunt Melissa covered her mouth. Grandpa Owen shook his head. Then the applause started. It rose from scattered claps into something thunderous. Afterward, people surrounded Eli, June, and me. No one congratulated our parents. My grandmother held my face and cried. "I should have noticed," she whispered. "I thought you were just mature." Mom and Dad vanished before the reception ended. I should have known humiliation would make them dangerous. 2 days later, I was helping June stretch before dance practice when someone knocked.
two child protection investigators stood on the porch. My stomach dropped. They stepped inside and began photographing everything. The medication chart I made for Eli became evidence that I was making unauthorized medical decisions. The color-coded calendar became proof that I had assumed a parental role without permission. Even the labeled food in the refrigerator was described as compensatory behavior in a neglectful home. Then one investigator made a call. "Yes," she said, glancing at me. "The biological parents filed the complaint. They say they are prepared to resume full responsibility immediately." My parents had reported me. One investigator went upstairs, while the other questioned June. She asked who made breakfast, signed school forms, attended rehearsals, and helped when she was sick. June answered honestly. "Harper does." Every answer became another note against me. Eli arrived home and froze. The investigator asked about his graduation speech. She suggested I had pressured him to shame our parents. His confusion turned to fury. "No one told me what to say. I said it because it was true." That was when I understood their plan at last. My parents had turned every sacrifice I made into evidence that I was stealing their children. The lead investigator closed her folder and delivered the warning without emotion. "We will return in 72 hours for an emergency custody hearing. Unless you can prove legal authority to care for them, Eli and June will be placed under your parents' direct supervision." The words felt impossible. I'd packed every lunch, attended every meeting, memorized every prescription, and stayed awake through every fever. But legally, none of it mattered. On paper, I was only their sister. My phone began vibrating before the investigators had even left. Aunt Melissa called first, then Grandpa Owen, then cousins who had ignored us for years. News traveled quickly, and everyone wanted to know why child protection had been at our house. Grandpa arrived less than an hour later. She waited until Eli and June were upstairs, pretending to do homework, before pulling me into the laundry room. "I will help you fight," she said, squeezing my hands. "But family courts usually favor biological parents. The judge may care more about names on birth certificates than who actually raised the children." As she left, Dad's SUV rolled into the driveway. My parents entered wearing concerned expressions, as if they had just heard about a terrible situation they had not created. Dad went straight to the kitchen and began cooking dinner. I had not seen him prepare a meal in years. The smell of burned onions and raw chicken filled the room while Mom sat beside Eli and asked to see his schoolwork. She didn't know what classes he was taking, but she nodded thoughtfully at every page. When June came downstairs, Dad pulled her into a hug. She stood stiffly in his arms, too surprised to react. Their performance was perfect. They were creating witnesses, building a record, proving they were attentive parents just in time for court. After the kids went to bed, Mom blocked one end of the hallway while Dad stood at the other. "If you challenge us," he said, "we will report you for kidnapping." I laughed because the threat sounded too absurd to be real. "You left me to raise them." "We never gave you permission to replace us," Mom replied. I looked at my father. "Why are you doing this? Why call the authorities on me for feeding your children?" His expression hardened. "Because you are their sister. Learn where you belong." That night, I searched for family lawyers until sunrise. Grandma gave me the number of an attorney named Camille Rhodes, who specialized in guardianship disputes. Her office was above a dentist in downtown Mesa, with files stacked along every wall. She listened without interrupting, then explained the truth. Siblings had almost no automatic custody rights. To win, I would have to prove our parents were legally unfit. Being careless was not enough. Missing recitals was not enough. Leaving children with an older daughter for years might not be enough. Meanwhile, my parents only had to appear willing to improve, and they had already started. The next morning, Dad was in the kitchen, making breakfast. The eggs were burned, the bacon was raw. Still, he placed on the table with a smile while Mom asked about their plans. Neither knew June had rehearsal at 4. Neither remembered Eli was almost out of test strips. They were playing family with 2 children they barely knew. I began recording everything Every appointment they forgot, every medication they mispronounced, every routine they interrupted while calling it responsibility. But while I gathered proof of their absence, they manufactured proof of involvement. Dad joined the school's parent association. Mom booked conferences with teachers she could not name. They arranged photographs around the living room, as if old pictures could erase years of neglect. 3 days before the hearing, I heard voices in June's bedroom. Mom sat beside her while Dad stood by the door. "You would be happier if you gave us a chance," Mom said. "Imagine vacations, weekends together, a normal family." June looked confused. "But Harper already takes me everywhere." Dad's smile vanished. "That is the problem," he replied. "She made you believe you need her." June began crying. I stepped into the room, but Dad raised his phone and started recording. "See," he said, "she becomes distressed whenever Harper thinks she might lose control." I stopped in the doorway. Even June's fear had become evidence. Relatives passed through the house all week. Aunt Melissa brought casseroles, Grandpa Owen repaired a cabinet, cousins who had not called in years came to check on us. Whenever anyone watched, our parents transformed. Mom replayed June's dance videos, Dad asked Eli about college, then nodded when Eli mentioned schools Dad had never heard of. The moment the front door closed, their interest disappeared. The 72 hours felt endless and impossibly short. Camille and I organized school records, pharmacy receipts, teacher emails, and emergency forms listing my number instead of theirs. I had proof I had been present. My parents arrived with something more dangerous, a rewritten history. They produced old permission slips with fresh signatures. Their calendars suddenly contained notes about recitals and appointments they had missed. There were photographs of Dad outside Eli's school and Mom beside June's dance studio, taken that week but presented without dates. Camille examined the papers. "They planned this before graduation," she said. The thought made my skin crawl. Eli's speech had not created their plan. It had only forced them to use it. The night before court, June climbed into my bed after a nightmare. Eli texted from the next room asking whether the judge would separate us. I told them both the same thing. "No matter what happens tomorrow, I will not stop fighting for you." After they fell asleep, I sat alone in the dark and admitted what I could not say aloud. For the first time in years, love might not be enough. The morning of the hearing arrived colder than it should have been for Arizona. I dressed in my only blazer while Mom and Dad rehearsed downstairs. June appeared in my doorway holding her dance costume. Her recital was that evening, and she had packed everything because she believed court would end in time for me to take her. I checked her shoes, tights, hairpins, and snacks. Eli came out looking exhausted. His medical case sat unopened on the dresser. Our parents had forbidden me from touching his supplies, saying it proved I refused to respect their role. Neither had collected the refill I ordered 4 days earlier. He had been rationing strips without telling me. I knew because he was wearing socks to bed again, something he only did when he feared waking up dizzy. The Maricopa County Courthouse rose above us like gray stone. Mom and Dad arrived separately in their best clothes, posing for a photographer. Inside, the waiting room divided itself in two. Grandma, Aunt Melissa, and Grandpa Owen sat beside us. Several cousins gathered around my parents. Camille reviewed our files: school records, pharmacy receipts, emergency contacts, emails from teachers, years of proof. "The truth is on our side," she whispered. "The law may not be." Judge Marin Holt entered without looking at us. My parents' lawyer spoke first. Dad's failed business became sacrifice. Mom's constant travel became hard work. Their absence became a lesson in independence. Then Dad took the stand. He cried beautifully. He claimed I had pushed him out of his children's lives, controlled their schedules, intercepted messages, and taught them to distrust him. Mom said I arranged activities during her working hours. She described herself as a mother desperate to reconnect with children who no longer respected her. The investigators supported them. They described a home where family roles had become confused and recommended that Eli and June return to their parents with my contact reduced to supervised visits. During recess, I found Eli against a hallway wall, breathing in counts of 4. "Please don't let them take June," he said. I promised I would fight, though I felt the case slipping away. Back inside, Camille called our witnesses. Aunt Melissa described holiday dinners where I checked Eli's numbers while our parents drank. Grandpa Owen remembered driving June to rehearsals because no adult was available. Then Grandma took the stand. She told the judge about finding me at 10 years old, standing on a chair to reach the washing machine while Dad hosted a sales seminar in the garage. Her voice broke. "I thought keeping the family together mattered most," she said. "I did not understand Harper was the one holding it together." For the first time, Judge Holt looked uncertain. She ordered both children interviewed immediately by the court psychologist. It was not a victory, but it was the first crack in my parents' perfect story. It was a beginning. June was interviewed first. Through the closed door, I heard her careful voice. She said she felt safest with me because I always came when she called. The psychologist asked whether I had told her to say that. "No," June answered. "Harper tells me to tell the truth." Eli's interview lasted longer. He described the systems we built together: alarms before meals, backup supplies in his backpack, notes inside cabinets, and the breathing exercise we used when fear made his hands shake. When he came out, he looked pale but steady. "I told her everything," he said. While we waited, my parents produced certificates from parenting classes. They were dated days after the report. They also submitted letters from neighbors who had never seen our home life. The court accepted them. The psychologist returned with a cautious expression. Both children were strongly attached to me, but there was no proof that they could never live safely with our parents. Her recommendation was a gradual transition. Eli and June would spend increasing amounts of time under Mom and Dad's authority, while my role would be reduced. Camille objected. "A forced separation from the only consistent caregiver they have known will cause real harm." Judge Holt looked down at the report. "The law requires this court to prioritize parental reunification whenever possible." My chest tightened. Then the judge began asking questions. "What is Eli's strongest subject?" she asked Dad. He hesitated. "Science." Eli hated science. He loved history. "What is the name of June's dance instructor?" Mom stared at the table. "Mrs. Parker?" Her instructor was Tessa Monroe. She had taught June for 5 years. Each mistake weakened their performance. During recess, I walked toward the fountain and heard my parents talking around the corner. Dad said his brother had a house outside Denver. Once the hearing ended, they could move there and start over without everyone interfering. Mom asked how quickly they could transfer the children. Not whether Eli wanted to leave school, not whether June could keep dancing. Only how quickly they could escape the people who knew the truth. I rushed back to Camille, but she shook her head. "Without a recording, they will deny it. Stay calm. They are waiting for you to lose control." So I sat quietly while strangers debated the future of 2 people I knew better than anyone there. By late afternoon, Judge Holt refused to issue a final order. The testimony was too contradictory. Instead, she ordered a full family assessment. A court evaluator would visit our home, interview teachers and relatives, observe routines, and submit a report within 6 weeks. My parents looked irritated. Camille squeezed my hand. "This delay gives us something they did not want," she whispered. "Time." It gave them 6 weeks to prove they could play the roles they had abandoned for years, and it gave me 6 weeks to catch them forgetting the script at last. The evaluator, Sonia Ramirez, began visiting our house 3 days later. She arrived without warning and watched everything. At breakfast, Dad forgot June hated eggs. At dinner, Mom served Eli a plate without asking what he had already eaten or whether he had checked himself. During homework, they hovered uselessly, offering advice that had nothing to do with the assignments. Sonia wrote quietly in a black notebook. My parents noticed every movement of her pen. Their answer was not to learn. It was to control what she could see. Dad installed cameras in the kitchen, hallway, and living room, claiming they were for safety. Mom announced that I was no longer allowed to be alone with either child. Even simple conversations had to happen where they could listen. June stopped talking almost immediately. At dance practice, her movements lost their energy. She forgot combinations she had performed for months and stared at herself in the mirror like she no longer recognized the girl looking back. Her instructor, Tessa, called the house. Mom answered and promised everything was fine. It was not. June began pushing food around her plate and waking with headaches. She stopped asking for help because every request became an argument about whether I was interfering. Eli declined faster. Without his routines, his numbers swung unpredictably. He missed deadlines, forgot quizzes, and struggled to stay awake in class. Dad called it laziness. Mom grounded him for being irresponsible. They punished the symptoms of a problem they refused to understand. I documented everything in a password-protected file. Missed checks, forgotten supplies, school emails, changes in behavior, and every time Sonia witnessed our parents guessing their way through a basic routine. I had to be careful. Any suggestion from me was called manipulation. Any correction became proof I could not accept their authority. Aunt Melissa started visiting almost every evening. She claimed she was only dropping off food or checking on Grandma, but she watched closely. When Dad forgot groceries, she brought them. When Mom missed a rehearsal reminder, Melissa quietly drove June herself. Grandpa Owen offered money, suggesting that financial pressure might explain the chaos. Dad became furious. "We do not need charity," he snapped. That reaction revealed something important. This was not about lacking time, money, or support. They had been offered all three. It was about winning. One night, I found June crying beside her half-packed dance bag. She had overheard Mom and Dad discussing boarding schools in Colorado. They said the schools would give both children structure while allowing the adults to rebuild their marriage and careers. "They're going to send us away," June whispered. I held her while the hallway camera blinked above us. The next morning, my parents filed another complaint. They claimed I was teaching June to fear them. The war had entered a much darker stage. The new complaint triggered a police investigation. 2 detectives arrived that afternoon and questioned me at the dining table. They asked whether I had signed school documents, requested medical supplies, or told the children their parents could not be trusted. Every honest answer sounded dangerous. Yes, I signed forms when deadlines were approaching. Yes, I ordered supplies when Eli was running out. Yes, I told June to call me if she felt unsafe. The detectives kept writing. I began doubting decisions I had never questioned. Had I crossed a line by doing what no one else would do? Was protecting 2 children still wrong if the law had never officially given me permission? June and Eli were interviewed separately. Their stories matched mine, but Mom claimed that consistency proved coaching. "They repeat Harper's version because she trained them to," she said. The accusation was absurd, yet it kept the case open. Then my parents underwent psychological evaluations. They could not explain Eli's daily routine. They did not know June's closest friend, her pre-performance ritual, or why she kept a silver ribbon in her dance bag. They knew nothing about either child. But the evaluator found that they genuinely believed they had been attentive parents. They were not lying. They had rewritten our history so completely that they saw themselves as victims. In their minds, I had stolen a role they had always performed. That sincerity made them more convincing. Camille called me into her office. "We are losing ground," she said. "Courts trust parents who seem sincere, even when their memories are wrong." While the case dragged on, the children's lives began collapsing. June missed her spring recital because Mom decided dance was not important. Eli missed college application deadlines because I was forbidden from helping him, and no one else remembered. Grandma offered to take temporary guardianship. Dad exploded. He accused her of joining my campaign and ordered her out. The woman who raised him became another enemy the moment she questioned his version of fatherhood. Desperate, I contacted an old friend of Grandma's who worked in social services. She could not interfere, but she gave me one piece of advice. Build a circle around them. If the court limits you, make sure other safe adults are watching. So I did. Tessa agreed June could call her. Eli's school counselor promised to monitor his health and grades. Aunt Melissa and Grandpa Owen created a schedule so someone checked in every day. My parents discovered the arrangement. They called it a spy network. I called it protection. The final assessment was finished, and Camille prepared me for the worst. She believed the judge might give our parents full control. That night, I helped June practice quietly in the garage while Eli studied at the workbench. For one evening, we returned to our old rhythm. I knew it might be the last time we were allowed to feel like a family. The report arrived the next morning. Camille read it in silence. Sonia had written that I provided exceptional consistency and care. She confirmed that I had been the children's primary caregiver for years. Then came the sentence that made my stomach turn. Despite those findings, she recommended that legal custody remain with our parents because the court was required to attempt reunification before considering permanent guardianship by a sibling. I felt June's hand tighten around mine. But buried near the end of the report was something important. Sonia had serious concerns about Mom and Dad's ability to manage Eli's health, support June's education, and maintain stable routines. She recommended weekly visits from social services, mandatory therapy, and continued involvement from extended family. It was not a victory. It was a door left unlocked. At the final hearing, my parents arrived smiling. Dad had hired the same photographer again. Mom wore a cream dress and held June's hand for the cameras, though June pulled away the moment they entered the building. Their lawyer presented the report as proof that the family should be restored. Camille argued that returning control without strict safeguards would place both children at risk. Judge Holt listened for nearly 3 hours. When she finally began reading her decision, every sound in the courtroom disappeared. Custody would remain with our parents. My vision blurred. Then the judge continued. Social services would conduct unannounced weekly checks. Mom and Dad would attend family therapy and complete real medical care training. I would receive legally protected visitation and the right to participate in Eli's medical decisions and June's educational planning. Any missed appointment, unsafe decision, or attempt to block my court-ordered involvement could trigger immediate review. Dad's expression changed at once. He had won, but the victory came with rules, witnesses, and consequences. Outside the courtroom, he forced a smile while the photographer took pictures. Mom whispered something sharp into his ear. Neither looked at the children. Back home, they discovered what actual parenting required. Eli's care was not a simple alarm on a phone. His needs changed depending on meals, exercise, sleep, stress, and a dozen details they had never noticed. Dad tried to follow a printed schedule and became angry whenever Eli's body failed to obey it. June's dance routine confused them just as much. She needed certain foods before practice, specific hair supplies, and quiet time when anxiety made her stomach hurt. Before her first rehearsal under their supervision, Dad attempted to braid her hair. He pulled too hard, tangled it into a knot, and finally cut out a section with kitchen scissors. June cried all the way to the studio. That evening, we attended our first required therapy session. Dr. Evelyn Cross asked my parents simple questions. They could not answer most of them. Dr. Cross did not let them hide behind excuses. She asked what calmed Eli when he felt his body changing. Dad guessed music. She asked what June did before stepping onto a stage. Mom said she stretched. Neither answer was close. "You are not being judged for what you do not know," Dr. Cross said. "You are being judged by whether you are willing to learn." My parents said they were. Within 2 weeks, it was obvious they had agreed only for the judge. The social worker arrived without warning. Once, she found expired food because Dad had forgotten to shop. Another time, Eli's supplies were on the garage freezer beside powdered drinks, ruined by the heat. Mom blamed Eli. Dad blamed me. Their united front began to split. Dad started drinking at night. Mom worked late and left him with homework and meals. By the end of the month, they argued every evening. Eli's grades dropped. His teachers called, but our parents accused the school of exaggerating. June stopped practicing. The girl who once danced through every room now sat staring at the wall. Still, Aunt Melissa appeared at dinner with too much food. Grandpa Owen offered rides when our parents forgot rehearsals. Grandma restocked the kitchen. Mom and Dad hated the help, but refusing it would expose how badly they needed it. 3 months after the hearing, Eli's school called an emergency meeting. He had gone dangerously low during a test. The teacher saw him shaking, but no one knew what to do because his medical plan had not been updated. The principal warned that another failure could trigger a new report. My parents sat silently while the nurse explained Eli's needs as if he were a stranger. That night, I found him in the garage, stacking Dad's inventory boxes into towers, knocking them down, then rebuilding them. His hands would not stop trembling. I could no longer manage his care without permission, but I could sit beside him. So I counted backward from 10 until his breathing slowed. June's summer recital came next. Our parents did not know she had to arrive 2 hours early. They forgot her snacks, bought the wrong tights, and tried to fix her hair with a rubber band. At 5 in the morning, June knocked on my door. Her makeup was smeared, her costume was wrinkled, her hair was tangled around a crooked braid. "Can you make me look like myself again?" she whispered. I spent an hour helping her while staying within the court order. At the theater, Mom and Dad clapped at the wrong moments, used flash photography after being warned, and left before June received her award. I stayed until the lights went out. Dr. Cross called an emergency session 2 days later. She closed her folder and looked at my father. "What is Eli's favorite subject?" Dad opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Then she asked, "Who is June's best friend?" He looked at Mom. Mom looked at the floor. For the first time, my father understood that he had gone to war for children he did not know. Dad did not answer. His face collapsed into his hands, and a sound came out of him that I had never heard before. It was not the measured crying he had performed in court. There was no pause for effect or glance toward an audience. He sobbed like something inside him had broken. Dr. Cross waited until he lifted his head. "I don't know them," he whispered. The admission did not change the custody order, but it changed the room. Dr. Cross recommended intensive parenting classes, not the weekend certificates my parents had collected for court. They would have to learn chronic illness management, child development, and the daily work of caring for children they had ignored for years. I used every visitation hour the judge allowed. I helped Eli rebuild his schedule, checked his supplies, and sat with June while she practiced. Mom and Dad watched from doorways, angry that the children relaxed when I arrived. 6 months after the ruling, my parents announced they were separating. Responsibility had destroyed what remained of their marriage. Dad blamed Mom for being absent. Mom blamed Dad for being weak. Neither admitted they had fought for custody because losing in public humiliated them. Their arguments became negotiations over days. Dad wanted weekends except during sales events. Mom wanted weekdays except when Damien scheduled conferences. They discussed Eli and June like furniture moving between apartments. One night, Dad mentioned moving to Nevada for a business opportunity. Mom said she needed time to rediscover herself. Neither asked what would happen to the children. Dr. Cross documented each missed appointment and broken routine. Her reports became harsher every month. Then came the mistake that ended everything. Mom confused 2 of Eli's instructions. She gave him too much medication one evening, then skipped the next dose because she believed it had already been handled. By morning, Eli was unconscious on the bathroom floor. My number was still listed as his emergency contact because our parents had never updated the form. I reached the emergency department before either of them. I would not leave his side. Eli looked impossibly small beneath the white blankets. Machines surrounded his bed. I stayed beside him for 18 hours. Dad arrived and demanded to know why Mom changed the routine. Mom accused him of leaving the instructions unclear. They argued in the hallway while their son slept. A nurse documented every word. When Eli opened his eyes, he squeezed my fingers. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I caused another problem." "You did not cause this," I told him. At 3 in the morning, I found June alone near the vending machines. She had taken 2 buses and walked 6 blocks because neither parent would bring her to the hospital. She was 14, still in rehearsal clothes, and shaking so badly she could barely open a bottle of water. That was when the system stopped calling their behavior a misunderstanding. The hospital's social worker filed an emergency report before sunrise. This time, no one described the problem as confused family roles. Eli had nearly died because the adults with legal custody could not follow instructions they had been taught repeatedly. Camille called me from the courthouse parking lot. "We have an emergency hearing at noon," she said. "Bring every record you have." I brought everything: hospital notes, therapy reports, school warnings, social service logs, missed appointments, photographs of ruined supplies, statements from teachers, nurses, Tessa, Aunt Melissa, Grandpa Owen, and Grandma. For months, my parents had demanded proof. Now we had more than anyone could ignore. Judge Holt looked different when she entered the courtroom. The neutrality from the first hearing was gone. She read the hospital report twice, then asked Dad to explain Eli's care routine. He spoke in fragments. Mom interrupted him. They contradicted each other within 30 seconds. Their lawyer requested more support and another chance. "What support do your clients believe they need?" Judge Holt asked. Neither parent answered. They did not know enough about Eli to explain where they had failed. The children's guardian testified next. She said both Eli and June had asked to live with me. They did not describe their parents as cruel. They described them as unpredictable, careless, and unsafe. "The children are frightened," she said, "because they cannot trust the adults responsible for them to notice when something is wrong." Dad began crying again. This time no one looked impressed. Judge Holt ordered an immediate temporary transfer of custody to me while a full investigation continued. Mom protested that the decision was unfair. Dad said nothing. But when the judge finished speaking, I saw relief flash across both their faces. They were tired. Not tired from loving their children, tired from pretending. The drive home was quiet. June held her dance bag against her chest. Eli stared through the passenger window. None of us celebrated. We simply breathed without permission for the first time in months. The legal process continued. There were background checks, home inspections, financial reviews, interviews, medical training, and endless forms. I completed every requirement. My parents completed almost none. They missed supervised visits. They forgot scheduled calls. Mom sent one birthday message 3 days late. Dad stopped attending therapy after saying the sessions made him feel attacked. Eventually, their lawyer submitted notice that they would not oppose permanent guardianship. They called it acting in the children's best interests. Camille called it surrender. The final hearing was scheduled for early autumn. For the first time, we entered the courthouse without fear that we would leave separately. My parents did not appear. Their empty chairs said more than any testimony ever had. No one was surprised at all. Judge Holt granted me permanent legal guardianship in less than 20 minutes. She spoke about parents who demanded authority but abandoned responsibility when it became difficult. The order gave me control over medical care, education, housing, and every decision I had already been making for years without permission. When the gavel fell, June grabbed my arm. "Does this mean we can go home now?" I nodded. This time, home legally meant the place where I was. The months that followed were ordinary. Eli recovered and began community college in Mesa. His schedule became steady again. His grades were not perfect, and that was fine. He forgot assignments, complained about early classes, and argued with me over dishes. Normal problems felt like gifts. His supplies returned to the kitchen counter where they belonged. No one locked them away or accused me of controlling him. The refrigerator was stocked, labeled, and arranged by expiration date, and no investigator called it suspicious. June returned to dance slowly. At first, she stood at the back of the studio, afraid of making mistakes. Tessa gave her space. I attended every rehearsal without pushing. Eventually, June began moving like herself again. At her next recital, I sat in the third row with snacks, safety pins, and spare tights in my bag. Her hair was braided correctly. When she landed her final turn, she looked directly at me. I was already standing. Grandma moved into a house 4 streets away. Aunt Melissa still appeared at dinner, claiming she had cooked too much. Grandpa Owen taught June to drive while Eli shouted advice from the back seat. Our parents faded from our lives. Mom moved to California with Damien. She sent messages about needing time to heal. Dad relocated to Nevada and continued selling supplements online. Neither attended Eli's college orientation, neither asked for June's new recital schedule. For Christmas, a card arrived from Dad. His handwriting covered only 3 lines. He hoped we were doing well. He wished us a peaceful year. He signed the card with his first and last name, like a stranger completing a business form. At the bottom, he had written June's name incorrectly. Not a misspelling, a completely different name. June read the card twice. Then she looked at me without surprise, opened the kitchen drawer, and placed it beneath the batteries and takeout menus. "What are we having for dinner?" she asked. "Your favorite," I said. Which one? Chicken tacos, no onions, extra lime. She smiled. Behind her, Eli complained that someone had moved his charger. Grandma was knocking at the back door. Melissa had texted that she was bringing dessert. The house was loud, crowded, and imperfect. It was ours. My father had once told me to remember my place, so I did. My place was beside the children I had raised, inside the life we had rebuilt, doing what I had always done, showing up. And this time, no one could threaten to arrest me for it.